Hey guys, it's Miss Ginger, and today is April the 7th, and as promised, we are going to talk about pollution and our coastal development. One thing that I'm going to bring up today about pollution is there's many types of pollution. There's air pollution, there's water pollution, there's land pollution. Since we live on the coast, that's kind of where I'm drawing my focus to, is coastal pollution, not just here in Florida, but all along the Gulf Coast and our Atlantic and Pacific Oceans. Excuse me. One thing in particular that pops into my head when we talk about pollutions other than our trash. 4Ocean did a great job yesterday, I think, in the video that I presented to you guys. They talked about what we could do to stop waste from making its way to our waterways, and that's to reuse and recycle as much as possible. Be more considerate of where you toss your stuff. Recycle, number one. So we talked about that yesterday with 4Ocean, but something today we're going to talk about is a different kind of pollutant. And the project that I'm going to talk about is called the Deepwater Horizon Project. Actually, it was an oil rig out in the Gulf of Mexico near the coast of North Florida. In April of 2010, the oil platform exploded, and when it exploded, for 87 days, that's 3 days shy of 3 months, 200 million gallons of oil spilled into our Gulf of Mexico. 200 million gallons of crude oil spilled into the Gulf of Mexico. How did it affect us? Well, it had a huge impact. Had a huge impact on the mammals, the sea life, the sea plants, the seagrass, the mangroves. It broke a food chain, a huge food chain, to many of our species of fish, to our land critters like raccoons that go down and like to eat the crabs and eat the mollusks or scallops or whatever they can get their little paws onto. It affected our birds. They weren't able to go out and get, their fish because they were tainted with oil. We did a great job in trying to contain the oil from going further than it did. You can see, pull up some videos about it, see how far it actually, we could visibly see it. We couldn't see below. We could see from the space satellites and from aerial pictures from different aircrafts how far it started to spread, but we were able to see tar balls rolling up on our beaches from Florida all the way to Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, Texas. And now, 10 years later, they're even saying that you can't see it with the satellite, infrared satellite that NASA has, but you can see a film over the water. The scientists are testing our Gulf waters all the way around to the Atlantic side. It's the petroleum, the thin petroleum that's on top of the water is going all the way up to the coast of North Carolina, and this is from 10 years ago. So we're still hurting from an incident that happened 10 years ago. The largest oil spill and worst oil spill in U.S. history 10 years ago, and we are still feeling the effects of it today. That's another pollutant. That's another thing that's gotten into our water and has affected so many. It's affected not only our ocean life, but our fishermen, our fisheries that we have. Can you imagine being a fisherman and being told, sorry, you can't go out and fish because what you're bringing back, people don't want to eat? It's destroyed people, fishermen. It's destroyed animals. It's killed off many things. That's just another form of pollution. Another way that pollution is getting into our waters is, again, it's by humans, unfortunately. And one of the biggest going things these days is our cruise ship lines. They're going out, their ships are getting bigger and bigger and taking on more and more people. It used to be just a couple thousand. Now it's 3,000 and 4,000 people going out on a ship for 2, 3, 4 weeks at a time. Where does all their stuff go? And you know what stuff I'm talking about. Yeah, that stuff. Where does it go? Do you think they hold on to it in a tank below and pray that nobody gets wind of that? No, they dump it. They dump it off the coast. They dump it back into our oceans. Just think of what they're dumping. That's just horrible. But that is another way. We don't think about that, but that's another way that we're putting pollution back into our waters, and it does affect us in the long run. It is affecting us greatly. Well, there's a lot of things in place that can help eat up some of the bacteria that's being dumped in. There's a lot of biodegradable things that can be, that are put into the water. Not that we want to do that, but I know that having someone in the fishing industry, I know you have to be a certain amount of miles off the coast before you can throw your biodegradable cardboard off the side of the boat. Absolutely no cigarette butts ever go off the side of a boat that I'm on, or my kids are on, because they'll make their way back to the beach, or they'll make their way into one of our animals, our turtles, our fish, and it'll kill them. So those don't ever go off a boat. But doing beach cleanups with 4Ocean, the #1 item, and 4Ocean, if you haven't seen the videos or heard me talk about it, they have you dump all the trash on these big blue tarps, and they have volunteers that sit there and pick out like the aluminum, the plastics, the styrofoam, cigarette butts, everything, anything and everything that we collect. And the #1 item every time I've been on a beach cleanup is cigarette butts. And we're not talking 1,000, we're talking thousands. But I think the St. Pete beach cleanup was 15,000. I think it was 15,000 cigarette butts collected. It's pretty shocking. So that's another way pollution is getting into our waterways. And let's talk about coastal development. If we continue at the rate we're going with coastal development, there will be no coastlines left. It'll be all homes, businesses, hotels, and all for tourism, and all for money. We're tearing up all of our beautiful beaches and one of our most beautiful ecosystems. We're developing it. What happens when you develop something? When you want to build a house along the beach, and you want a clear path from your house straight out to the water, you want everything in its way taken out, you tear up a habitat. It could be our seashore birds, it could be our turtles, our nesting turtles. If you go into dredging, I'm going to talk just a second about an article I found on renourishment of our coastlines. If you dredge, you're dredging up our seagrass, you're dredging up a habitat for one of our sea creatures. We just don't have any more room for coastal development. And when you have development along the coastline, you have to think about, how are we getting water out there, fresh water out there? How are we getting our sewer off the coastline? Are the homeowners being responsible enough to tap into our city sewer lines, or are they pumping their sewage out into the Gulf, out into the Atlantic, out into the Pacific? How's electricity getting there? You have to think about all these different things. When we tear up our coastlines, we tear down our sand dunes, we tear down our mangroves, and those two things right there protect our shorelines from natural disasters such as hurricanes. In Okinawa, when I was there, I had 6 weeks of tsunamis back to back to back. It was every 2 weeks we had a tsunami come rolling in, and it didn't make me very happy that I had to be on lockdown on base, but I was able to watch it. I was actually in base housing, and it was at the highest point of the island, and I could look down and watch the wave just crashing in over the Sonabe seawall, and it was so powerful. And there's a lot of history, tsunami history there on Okinawa. And Maida Point was a really eye-opener for me, and Mother Nature and our coastlines. So anyway, going back to our coast, we've just got to stop developing. I've piped in a little video down below. It says St. Pete Clearwater, but it's actually about Honeymoon and Caladesi. And I want you to look through the video. It's very beautiful, and I'm sure you guys have been there. Hope you've been there. If you haven't, talk your mom and dad into taking you out there. It is by far, next to Fort DeSoto, one of the most beautiful beaches we have here. This part of Florida, I think North Florida beaches are by far the best, but that's just my opinion. If you look at the video, when you're watching the video, you never see them pan over to Clearwater. You never see all the hotels and condos and high-rises over there. All you see is this beautiful, pristine beaches. And we have to be thankful. I know a lot of people go, I don't want to pay $6 to go out to my beach. Well, you're going to pay for parking to go to the beach at Clearwater Beach. Why don't you pay the $6 to go to a state park and see what beaches are really like? Many years ago, the founding fathers of Dunedin said, we are not going to sell out to these business developers. We're going to keep our beach as pristine as we can. We're going to maintain it as long as we can. And the state of Florida stepped in and said, hey, we're going to help you protect this coastline. We are going to now make this a state park. So thank you for everyone who stood up for Honeymoon Island and Caladesi Island and said no development out there at all. So we have in place, when you try to get to Caladesi Island by kayak, you have to go through a whole massive forest of mangroves. Mangroves are there to protect our shorelines. They take the brunt of our tidal surges and storm waters when they come raging in from hurricanes. We have sand dunes along Honeymoon Island that have been replenished by dredging. And now that I've said that, I'm going to read to you something that I pulled up from Pinellas County Environmental Protection Agency website. A federal shore protection project was initiated along 100% of Pinellas County's developed shorelines in 1966. So the project includes the development barrier islands of Clearwater Beach, Sand Key, Treasure Island, and Long Key. The latter three are the active projects. No structures were approved for inclusion in this project. By the 1970s, beach nourishment had become the preferred method of shore protection because, unlike structures, it addressed the problem of lack of sand in the nearshore system. Beach nourishment is a process of adding sand to an eroding beach. Eroding means it's being taken away to advance the shoreline seaward. So they want to put more sand, dredge sand from out, just off the coast, dredge it and bring it up to the beach so that it makes the beach longer, like wider. You have to walk from Clearwater Beach and you're like, oh my gosh, am I ever going to make it to the water? Well, they want that so that when we have storms that come rolling in, it will erode the beach away and not so much the hotels and condos behind us. So typically the beach sand is dredged, it's pumped onto the eroding beach through a pipeline, and the sand is distributed by bulldozers. I'm sure that almost everybody that has been to the beach at some time or another has seen piles and piles of sand, and it does kind of smell. It's from the dredged sand. They dredge it out and bring it up to the beach. They also dredge along the coastline to make way for ships and larger boats to be able to get through, and that dredged material is put up on our beaches, or it is taken to another area, another coastline maybe, or another part of the beach to be disposed of. And I'll get back to that in just a second. So beach nourishment is intended to occur at regular intervals in order to provide enough sand to curtail erosion for a certain number of years. The subsequent nourishment projects are referred to as renourishment, and most projects involve more than a single sand placement, including rebuilding the physical dune, planting dune vegetation, which would be our sea oats, and sea oats are protected, planting seed vegetation to stabilize the newly constructed dune, and other environmental enhancements. So another environmental enhancement, which I think is really cool, was 20 plus years ago when we were stationed in North Florida along from Fort Walton Beach to Destin along Highway 98. It's nothing but sand on either side. That's it, just sand dunes and sea oats. And we had some storms that had come through and washed a lot of the sand out. So they said, hey, you know what? It's near Christmas time. What we're going to do is we're going to have everyone bring us their trees. And I'm like, what in the world? Well, they had this idea, and it worked really great. They had everybody that wanted to donate their Christmas tree could come out, drop their Christmas tree off at certain spots along the coastline there in Fort Walton and Destin, between Fort Walton Beach and Destin, and they dredged along the shoreline, brought sand up, and made some huge mounds. So you really can't. Back then you couldn't see the coast, you couldn't see the water from the road because it was built up with Christmas trees and sand, and then put sea oats in, and that was really cool, and it was great until we had back-to-back storms that pretty much washed it all back out. But that was just it was a great way to say, hey, let's do something, save our coastline, and they tried, and unfortunately Mother Nature, she'll get you every time. So a really cool story is somebody tried to go from Destin to Fort Walton Beach, and the water was, from the Gulf was going over into the bay, and the guy in his car went right to the bay and wound up over towards Niceville along the shoreline. He survived, but his car didn't, and that's a true story. So anyway, that is what I have today, guys, for our pollution and coastal development. Pollution comes in many different ways. It's not just the trash that we put in the ocean, but it could be our own natural resources that cause pollution. And then coastal development, again, the more we build on our coast, the more we're doing damage to our ecosystems and to our sea life and seagrasses. So with that, I would like for you to watch the video below. Just tell me what you think about Honeymoon Island. I think it's beautiful. I grew up there. Yeah, it's awesome. So watch the video. I don't have anything other than that for today. Just watch the video down below. I did put in a couple questions for you to answer for your classwork participation. And I'll see you guys tomorrow. Tomorrow we're going to be talking about plankton and its vital role that it plays in keeping us alive every day. And then the big word, bioluminescence. We're going to talk about that tomorrow too. Alright guys, have a good night.